Chris Cantelmo here with another vibration. I wanted to talk more about the simulation hypothesis and the different ways that might impact the future of humanity. Because when you get involved with DMT, when you start doing DMT, you are confronted without question with the truth that reality is not as it seems in everyday serotonin-mediated existence. Anyone who hasn't done DMT or any psychedelic, but DMT in particular, if you haven't done a psychedelic, your version of everyday reality is a tiny little version of what is of the bigger reality. And if you've done DMT, you know that serotonin-mediated existence it's an illusion. It's no more real. It's definitely less real than the DMT experience. Okay, why is that? Because the DMT experience includes all of everyday reality in its precision, but then goes beyond that to an even more precise realm. And as I've discussed in other videos, there's most drugs that you do, they make reality a little fuzzier, a little less accurate, a little less precise. And there's often a price to be paid for introducing this compound into your system in the form of a hangover or something like that. With DMT, none of that is there. Nothing gets less precise. Everything gets more precise. When you go into a DMT breakthrough, everything, there is no wasted space. Everything fits precisely together. It's almost like there are no questions even. When you get into that space, everything just makes so much sense while you're there that it's almost like you don't have questions until you get back out here, and then you're like, how the hell how is that possible? How is it possible that I could go to a place that's more real than this reality right here that I'm seeing? And I tell you, it does get you to thinking. And one of the things that just the fact that you can go to a place that's more real than you're used to seeing makes you question everyday reality. Why isn't everyday reality that so real? And it leads you, I spend most of my free time, reading and listening to other people talk about consciousness and the role of consciousness in quantum mechanics and measurements and science. And ultimately, consciousness is the big question. What is consciousness? And now that we've got computers that are getting more and more powerful, or at least powerful enough where we can make video games that are pretty damn good and virtual reality that mimics everyday reality quite well, naturally, the simulation theory comes into existence. Like, hey, you know what? If we could do this, maybe there's if there's in the universe higher intelligence than humans, they probably already did this. And then you have to think, wow, maybe we're in a simulation. And first I'm going to talk about evidence from DMT that would in favor of the simulation hypothesis theory. Sometimes, in some of the breakthroughs, imagine that wherever you're looking, right, you have a certain visual field. In some of the breakthroughs, in all DMT experiences, things get more is added to the picture. Nothing is ever diminished or reduced or made fuzzier. Everything is just, if anything, things are added to the picture. And in some of the breakthroughs, you sort of get shown that everyday reality is a facade. And it's not subtle. It's almost like that facade doesn't really evaporate because you can always see it. But you sort of see the levers and the sort of like the machinations behind the scenes. And Terence McKenna used to talk about the machine elves. And there are times when I've done DMT and I've said, okay, that must be what Terence is talking about. Those are machine elves, because there are these like elfin machines that seem to be like projecting the visual field into our systems. And we assume that our visual field comes through our eyes. And when this happens, it's almost like you're peeling away the surface of reality, and you're looking behind it to see, oh shit, that's how reality works. And there's something alive back there. It's alive, and yet very sort of, in most cases, kind of industrial looking. It's all very precise, but not particularly biological, where when I have the experiences of seeing spirits floating back and forth and coming around and entertaining, those seem to have a biological origin, or they're softer. They're more lifelike than these machinations behind the scenes. So, on the one hand, when I've seen those breakthroughs where you see that what appears to be what you used to think of as reality is actually being projected by these incredibly fascinating machines, you think, holy shit, I think we're in a simulation. Like something is simulating what we know as ordinary perception. And when you have these breakthroughs, I'll call them like the projector operators. They're aware that you're seeing them, and they're like, they sort of give you you thought you knew about reality? No, you know what we show you. And it's just mind-boggling. So you say, okay, we're in a simulation, but why would they, if we're in a simulation, why wouldn't they just simulate that reality? Why simulate this lesser reality that we're in? Like, maybe they're at a stage in the simulation game where they can't quite simulate the real reality, the bigger reality, in high enough resolution. So what we see in this world, what they're projecting into this world, is a lower resolution version of reality. It really, when you have that type of breakthrough, it really does make you think we're in a simulation. But then you gotta kind of wonder, why would an advanced society want to even run ancestral simulations? Why would you care about creating a simulation that's a lesser version of your own, right? Because it would seem to me that the current, the main problem that humanity faces on the planet is power generation. Creating enough power for us to run all of our cars and air conditioning and all that is creating real havoc on Earth, global warming. So assuming that power generation is a problem everywhere, and you gotta start with certain assumptions if you're gonna think about anything. There would have to be a society out there who would want to spend energy running all of these simulations. And I guess if the computational power of some futuristic computer is so great that they can run simulations with very little power. Maybe there's some subset of the population that wants to create these simulated lives that might be us. But then you have to wonder, what kind of an idiot future generation would waste their time simulating us? I mean, what kind of jerk-offs are these people? Like, they have nothing better to do with their simulation or their technology than create essentially fake existences to what? To watch or to manipulate? Because if it comes to be that's the case, then unless they program free will into the simulation, which would make, you know, if they're watching a simulation that can just do whatever it wants, it would seem like it wouldn't be very much fun. I mean, video games, it's not like people buy video games to just turn them on and see what happens, right? You want to be a part of the game. So you would have to sort of think that a simulation, there would be a higher intelligence running it with some end in sight. So then you have to ask, what's the end in sight? Why would someone want to run these games? And maybe it could be that there's some big higher intelligence out there that gained the ability to create simulations and thought it was worth investing in the power to run them, assuming that, but you'd have to assume that power was essentially free to run all these simulations. And it just seems rather, I don't know, it doesn't seem like an interesting way to spend your time. But I'm not a video game guy. I guess there are a lot of people out there who like playing video games. So maybe there's this whole super advanced civilization out there where a lot of the people just like sitting around playing video games. That's what they do all day. Maybe when you get to a certain point in technological development where everything is automated, you don't have to work. Maybe that's how they spend some of their time, is just playing video games, and we're essentially the game pieces, sort of. It's quite possible. And when you listen to the real proponents of simulation theory, it basically it's inevitable. If assuming that a civilization gets to the point of technological capability to run a simulation, and they want to, well, then there would be an endless number of simulations. So the odds are, I mean, given that situation, odds are we're in a simulation. So then the question becomes, what do we do about it? Let's say we are in a simulation. It turns out we're in a simulation. What do you do? Because unless the rules of the game are revealed to us, we're kind of right back at square one. Where do we have free will or not? Ultimately, it would be up to each person to decide what's important in their simulated world. And it would seem to me that it still would come back to peace, love, and understanding. And there are enough distractions in life. There are enough things for us to think about that can really fuck with your head. Having to think about whether or not what we're doing is even real seems to be, I don't think it's a recipe for time well spent. And I mean, knowing is always better than not knowing. If we're in a simulation, of course, I would want to know, as I'm sure that you would want to know. And I guess then it would become, if you're in a simulation, how do you hack the simulation? How do you figure out how to hack the simulation to make a better outcome for yourself, right? Because we're all competitive and we want the best outcomes. So how would you hack the simulation to have the best outcome for you and your family and your friends? And to the extent that DMT reveals that we're possibly in a simulation, you really want it. It's just another reason to try DMT, because breaking through and getting into the innards of the simulation would seem to be essential for figuring out how to hack the simulation to your own benefit and to the long-term outcome, beneficial outcome of humanity. Because people, the real downside to finding out that you're in a simulation, or you got to wonder, if you're in a simulation, are there downsides or upsides or not? Or if it's just a game, does it really even matter how it turns out? But I don't know that. I mean, the problem is you could have people who, if they realize it's all a game, they'll start blowing up nuclear weapons or something, just for the hell of it, because they figure, oh, it's a simulation. Who cares? It just ends the game, and then we'll start up a new simulation. I don't know if simulated nuclear explosions are any more desirable than real ones. So the amazing thing about DMT is when I used to listen to people talk about simulation theory, and again I would just roll my eyes like, that's fucking bullshit. There's no way we're in a simulation. And then you do DMT and you think, holy shit, I think we might be in a simulation. And then you really start thinking about all the ramifications of it. And they're really quite profound. But ultimately, I think it boils down to that we need to be nice to each other and always try to be good to each other is the default way to go. But you will, without question, if you don't quite understand simulation theory yet, when you do DMT, you're gonna be like, oh shit, okay, I get it. Wow, we're in a simulation. And I hope we're not. I want to be a real person with a real life, and I don't know, maybe if someone figured out a way to generate consciousness from a machine or a computer, and it's just as real as any other consciousness, who am I to judge? But until I know for sure, I'm going to keep assuming that things are real, even though when you go to the DMT world, it's a more real version of real than this. I'm gonna stick with the default, because I think until I get more information, it seems like a better, simpler life to deal with, assuming that we have free will, or at least some semblance of free will, and that a good, peaceful, loving outcome is always best. I think that's a good idea.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Pretty good. And this is another vibration. See ya.